Hello. So, today I am going to bring you something that I really believe in and that has really had some results with me. I've been toying with this on and off for quite a long time, but I'm starting to make more headway with this in myself, and the experiences I'm having with it are pretty profound because I realize that sometimes I could be holding something and reacting to something that I really don't need to, and having a very direct and very actionable way of working through it is pretty amazing. So I'm going to share how I do that with you. I'm going to give you a live demo in a little bit, but first we'll talk a little bit about what it is. So, what we're really asking is what actually is a fear? Because it's pretty evident if you go outside, if you walk into a city, or maybe you don't even have to be in a city, maybe you just walk around your neighborhood sometimes. It's pretty evident to me that the atmosphere for a lot of people and the way that we move, the way that we talk, is fear, right? And in fact, actually, it's funny. Like something I really think is funny recently that I've noticed more than ever is that if you start a conversation with someone at random, like for example, if you start a hey, how's it going? Like I thought you were interesting. I just wanted to come and say hi, or you just say nice shoes to someone at your coffee shop or whatever. Sometimes you'll get like a really smooth, neutral, like, oh thanks, or you'll get a warm, like, oh wow, thanks, yeah, I love these shoes. Or but most of the time, at least in my limited experience, it's usually like a shocked reaction. And that seems quite normal, right? It seems natural. It almost seems like, oh yeah, of course it's shocked. I didn't expect this some random to start talking to me. But when you actually think about it a little bit more, is it not bizarre that we're often shocked and scared and bothered when people communicate with us, or when life presents us a situation that we were unexpected, that wasn't expected by us? Like, I notice when a lot of people are walking around, like when I sort of tune into them, there's sort of like this busy, rushed function, especially here. I live in a fairly big city, and I'll notice people, it's like they're on the phones and they're navigating this or that, they don't know what's going on around them. And, I also have noticed in myself, like there are like a lot of times through my life, a lot of times through my life, where I've felt a lot of fear within myself, to the point where at one stage in my life a few years ago, I had, it's funny because like when you look it up, if you look up panic attacks, there's like I remember reading something. It's like panic attack can not last longer than 20 minutes, but for 8 months I had panic attacks, basically all day every day. They would go up and down. Sure, maybe the peaks were 20 minutes, but generally I had panic attacks all day every day for around 8 months, and I lived in fear that I didn't know was possible to reach. And since then and after then, I have become more interested in it as a topic, and it's something that I've worked on a lot with my therapist over the last few years. Like what actually is fear, and where do my fears come from specifically? And one of the most helpful ways I've found of sort of charting through this is actually doing it directly with a journal, which we'll get into soon. So a little bit about how I sort of see this working a lot of the time. What I tend to notice is that fears are sort of icebergs, right? Like we have a fear and we see the thing that we're afraid of. It's like, because I might be like, I'll give just an example, and maybe this will highlight how I like to approach it. So for example, let's say I'm afraid of having a difficult conversation with my spouse, with my wife or my husband, my boyfriend or girlfriend. And I'm afraid of this. Like I don't want to have it, and it builds up in me, and I'm kind of, I have to do other things, I have other responsibilities, but this fear of like having this conversation with my spouse is sort of building up in me, and it's making me really uncomfortable at some level. And it's like just there, and it's like when I see my spouse, there's like this tension, and I don't really necessarily feel like I can approach it. I don't know what to do about it. I don't know who to talk to about it. I don't know if people will understand. I don't really know how to give it the attention. But it's interesting because what if we actually like stop and ask in that situation, and we ask like, what is it that I'm actually afraid of? Like, what actually is this fear? What actually is this thing that I'm most afraid of? Like, and it seems obvious, but it's not that obvious really to look into it. It's not that obvious why we're afraid. And it is a big deal. It's a very big deal, because if you're living your day, even like 20% of your day, living in fear, living in a reaction to a fear you have, that's a lot of, like, 20% of your day. That's going to be a lot of your day. That's going to be a lot of your week. That's going to be a lot of a month and a year, and eventually it's going to be a lot of your life, and you're accumulating this fear, and this fear, you have a relationship with this fear in some way, but it's like there's a subservience to it rather than having a relationship with it where we can really inquire and where we can potentially even leverage it to understand better things about ourselves. I mean, fear is a fascinating force. It's a force as old as man, and it's a fascinating force for human beings because it drives us in so many directions. But let's talk a little bit about that example I gave. What if I sat down and I asked myself why, like, just I stopped making dinner, I stopped doing this, and I actually asked myself, like, why am I actually afraid of having this conversation with my wife? What actually is it? What actually is this fear? And I sit with it, and I sort of, this is key, I feel into it. I sort of use my body of feeling to locate where that fear is, and I sort of sit with it, and I'm sort of contemplating, I'm sort of mulling over, what is it that I'm really afraid of here? What actually is this fear? Why am I afraid of having this conversation with my wife? Okay. So maybe I see that it's like, well, I don't want it to go the wrong way. I don't want it to be taken the wrong way. I don't want to have an argument. I don't want to have a negative encounter with my spouse here, right? Okay, so it's like, what actually is this fear? So I'm asking the same question I went through one layer there, just a touch, like a centimeter downward. It's fairly obvious conclusion to reach that I don't want to have a bad situation. Okay, so why? What actually am I afraid of happening? What is it that I'm actually afraid of happening in this situation? Well, if things are negative like that, it could be like a negative feeling for both of us, and then maybe she'll leave. Maybe she'll just walk out on me. And that's a bit more of a jump. That's more of a, okay, damn, like, so at some level, I acknowledge that I'm actually afraid of my wife leaving me. I'm afraid that she'll just walk out on me if I have this conversation. It's a difficult conversation. How, I don't know how she's going to react. How is she going to react to that? And then what I'm doing here is I'm sort of following that thread. I'm sort of weaving in and out and using my feeling body to sort of encounter slightly ever deepening layers of that fear, right? So I'm sort of, why is it that, and at first it seems obvious, right? So here, tricks here. First of all, nothing is obvious. Assume a complete blank slate, but before investigating anything really, I think, but fears particularly, assume a blank slate. So if you get to that point, it's like, well, why am I afraid of my wife leaving me? There's a part of the mind that's going to kick in there instinctually and be like, oh, of course I'm afraid of my wife leaving me, because then I'll have to uproot it's like, all right, cool. And that's fine. Like, we can go with that another time. But what we're doing right now is we're asking a fairly simple question. And we're assuming that we don't know the answer. We're just letting our feeling take us to the answer. why is it that I'm actually afraid of my wife leaving me? And I'm sitting with that, and there's discomfort there. Or maybe there's even a surprising sort of different flavor of emotion. Like, I'm not really sure, but I'm sitting with, why is it that I'm actually afraid of my wife leaving me? Okay. So I'm sitting with that. Taking it a layer deeper, and I'm coming to so the reason I feel afraid by that is because I don't know what I would do without my wife. I'm not sure what I would do. Like, I don't know whoa, oh shit, that's another one. So it's like, I went in, and then it's like, oh, there was a bit of a cascade there, and the floor broke, and it was like, it's like, all right. Oh, so I don't really know what I would do by myself. So this kind of illuminates to me a scenario in my mind. It's like, oh, I don't know what I would be doing if I didn't have my wife with me. And I can sort of reformulate that a little bit, and I'm not really sure who I am by myself. And there's a word for that. That's insight, right? Like, we have insight. We have a sight. We have like an insight about something into ourselves. And then what I'll do is, again, we're ever deepening. No assumptions. I'm sort of, because again, there might be another mental reaction there, and there's a sort of a sense of like a reactive. Oh, well, because humans are social. It's like, all right, humans are social creatures, dude. You're a social creature, whatever. I'm a social creature. Bob Dole is a social creature, but specifically as to you right now, we don't know the answer. Why is it that I'm actually afraid of being alone? What is it that I think, like, what is it that I'm actually afraid of specifically? What can I ascertain out of that recognition? What is it that I'm actually afraid of there? Going a little bit deeper. Okay. I think that I'd just be really scared if I'm alone. I think I'd be bored. I think I'd be worried. I mean, what if my wife's out doing other stuff? She might move on. She might find a better person. I'm just gonna be by myself, like doing nothing. And then that's interesting, because that takes me that layer deeper. And it's like, oh, so it's interesting because the way my wife fits into my life is that she sort of plugs this hole there. But I assume at some level deeper down into down beneath the surface of the iceberg, that if I was alone, I actually wouldn't be okay. So it's not so much that I just fear being alone, because being alone is one thing, but I fear that if what being alone represents to me is that I would not be okay. I wouldn't be okay. And then I'm isolating that, and I'm asking, what actually is this fear of being alone? And it's like, well, because if I was alone, what if I was not okay? And then I'm investigating that, and I'm thinking, well, and then what I'm doing here is I'm creating I'm essentially not negotiating as such, but I'm creating a relationship with my fear, right? I'm structuring a line, I have a line of communication with a fear that was underlying this other fear. I'm asking a particular question. What is it? Why is it that I believe that I wouldn't be okay when I'm alone? What is it? What is actually this fear? What is this? Maybe I believe that I'm not really capable of being alone. And that's interesting, because when I think about it like that, it helps me realize that maybe the role my wife plays in a way, it's like it's almost like it's hard for me to really let her be how she is around me, because I'm actually kind of putting a lot of pressure on the relationship here. I'm putting a lot of pressure on her, because if she's not with me, I'm actually like, I think it's like something I need to talk to her about, but I can't talk to her about it. So, because I have this fear of being alone, but it's like, if I don't talk to her about it, the way that I navigate the relationship is like, I'm bringing a lot of my layered fear, like that deeper fear into the relationship. It's permeating my relationship with my wife. And it's like the way I'm perceiving my wife is sort of like with desperation, and thus the way I'm enacting with her, the way I'm spending time with her, the way I'm making love to her, the way I'm whatever I'm doing with her or without her, or when she's out a bit too long. It's not really that she's doing something wrong. It's more that actually I have this fear deep down and she's rubbing against it. And more so, what would it be like if I had the space and I had the openness to discuss this with my wife, and then it's like maybe she would learn something really deep about me, and maybe she would have like, whoa, actually that clicks for me at a heart level somehow. I know that like you feel like that. And it's like, wow. And again, that's like a really optimistic, positive scenario. But the point is, like, hopefully that example does justice. We're sort of investigating layers deeper. And the reason we're really doing this is I want you to think of like a tree where, let's say we have, we have like a pot plant, maybe even. Forget a tree. We have like a pot plant, like a Buddha belly fig or something. And it's like if we have a branch with like, on the top we have the leaves coming out. They're the most visible, like naturally I can see those parts first. And there would appear to be, they're in front of me right away. And if I clip them, if I prune those parts, they'll grow back. So it's like if I'm afraid of not having this conversation with my wife, and then I was like, oh, whatever, I won't bother with it now. I'll say something else. I'll shift my attention. I'll go play some guitar or like whatever it is. It's like, well, that's cool for now. And that does work. It does, the fear does dissipate a lot of the time, right? Whatever we do to do that. We might even get drunk or something and the fear does dissipate. But it grows right back because it still has, like, as we go further through the branch, it's like the branch is like, oh, actually it's this fear of being alone. And then maybe as we go deeper, we reach into the root, into the trunk, and we're seeing, oh, wow, this is actually connected to a lot of stuff in me that I didn't know and I walk around with all the time. And then, we're sort of, maybe later on, we're sort of really investigating right down to the rhizome of this organism, this Buddha belly fig. I really like those. I found that they're just absolutely beautiful bonsais. Have to get one of those for this table. So hopefully you can see what that really is. And it's like, and the question comes, like, well, why would I even do this then? Why am I actually going to spend time investigating my fears and limiting beliefs? What's actually the point of this? Now, for me, this was always fairly obvious, but I do understand I can understand why that would come up as a question, because it's like, is there really any value in this? And what I would say to that is like, absolutely yes, because if we're spending the bulk of our time reacting to things that we're afraid of, that we don't really understand, we are essentially conditioning ourselves through the miracle of neuroplasticity and just conditioning in itself, psychological conditioning. We're conditioning ourselves to be very reactive, and we're also projecting a certain frame onto reality through which we interact. Because we say, oh, this is reality, this is how it is, life is like this, life is like that. But it's like, how many things that we experience in life do we actually question that deeply? Like we say, oh, this is how society is, this is how the job market is, this is how relationships work. But it's like, sure, you may have some, maybe even you have a lot of experience in that, but how much time have we actually spent questioning why we actually think that or why we actually believe that? Like, how many notepads have we filled up actually considering not what other people think, not what professionals say, not what amateurs say, not what Bob Dole says. What do I actually think? Because at the end of the day, it's about me. I'm the one dreaming up my scenarios, and I'm the one reacting to my fears. At the end of the day, it's me who has the bad end of the stick here. But how much do I actually know about this? And when I understand that better, like the other benefit of this, so there's the understanding benefit and the freedom of conditioning element. But there's also another element that's, for me, more juicy, and that's the element of the catharsis of being actually able to understand how my mind works, to me, is nothing turns me on more, nothing fascinates me more, nothing has me up and about more than understanding how my inner world works, how I think and how I feel about things. And having those little insights, those windows into like, wow, I actually know so much more about myself right now. There is nothing better than that for me. That for me alone is the highest pleasure that I've experienced in life. Because we'll talk about this another time maybe, but like some of the insights I can have through just sitting and writing these things, it's not just like a cerebral logical recognition of it's an embodied holistic like almost like out of body experience sometimes when I realize I've been running off of a program that I'm not that conscious of. That is a fascinating thing to have. And I want to share that with you. I want you to ponder on that a little bit and to recognize that that could be an awesome element of your life, right? It's having personally ascertained insight. You're getting that insight through your direct experience, not through what some sage has to say or some idiot has to say or Bob Dole. You're doing it through your direct experience, so it sticks when that happens. It's because you're working with the software. You're not just buying a new webcam or new keyboard. It's like you're working with the software, the structure, or even the plastic that molds the hardware even. You're working with the underlying. So anyway, I promised a bit of a live demo. So I'm gonna give my most recent inquiry for myself. This is all pretty personal stuff, but I think the reason I'm comfortable sharing that is because I understand the value of vulnerability and the value of authenticity and truth. I understand that. So I know that if I was to give you some theoretical example, that maybe it's better to have something that actually comes straight from the heart for me, and that hopefully you can feel as I'm communicating it. So I'll give you a demo. This is from last night. This was really good. Where actually is the fear? So I'm just starting with the emotion, the feeling. The fear is basically that I'll have all these dreams and aspirations, but they won't manifest. And I'll be unsuccessful, a loser. And I'm asking, what specifically? Okay, fear of not being able to garner a following and reach people with my content. I'm really passionate about that. So I'm asking, what actually is this fear? It's the fear of time passing by and me not progressing and actually getting anywhere. And I'm asking, as in? I'm actually afraid that I'm gonna have to spend my time working in a job like the previous one I had, that I won't tap into my potential, and that I'll have to suffer through days doing shit that I don't care about. Okay, so what actually is that fear? What is this fear? It's like feeling stuck and untapped. As in, it's like I'll be limited to living in this compressed and unfulfilling way, surrounded by hostile morons who don't give a fuck about me or even understand me. What actually is this fear? I'm not alive. I'm not taking life on. I'm just skating by and I don't give a fuck about what I'm doing. I feel as though it's all pointless and I'm not myself like that. And then I think of my parents doing just that and getting caught in that cycle. I'm so afraid of ending up like that. I'm so afraid of ending up in a low quality life, lived as a slave, stuck in a perpetual rut. I think that's what happens to most people. And I ask myself, what makes me different? Like, if they all can't seem to figure it out, can I? So what actually is this fear? The fear is that I might be kidding myself into believing I'm heading into this high quality life, and I actually just end up afraid and in a Centrelink office working for the dole on a fucking Salvos or something. So what actually is this fear? The fear is that there's no magic to life, no beauty, no adventure, just humdrum and dissatisfaction. The fear is being incompetent. The fear is being an incompetent who has these big ideas and just gets left behind. I'm afraid that I won't be okay and that my life will suck. Okay, where is the evidence for this? Now, I'm going to take a little pause there. Where I'm going with this is keep in mind, I have been doing this for a long time. And the way that I've sort of developed my style in investigating fears is fairly Socratic. I'm using different questions from different angles to investigate them, but this is not necessary. I'll talk about that after, but just to understand that this is not part of the prior explanation I gave. Okay, so where is the evidence for this? Why might this be true? Well, I've always found life difficult to navigate, and I've not done what I've truly wanted. Life difficult to navigate as in, well, I've felt a lot of difficult emotions, and I've felt weak, afraid. So thereby I think that I'll keep experiencing that. Why is that true? Because it's kept happening. But why does that guarantee that it'll happen again or color the rest of your life? It happens to lots of people. It's happening to my family, it's happening to my friends. How does that guarantee your experience of life? Well, isn't that how life is? It's rough, hard to live in a good way. Why is this so? What is this based off? Well, there is obviously suffering in the world. I've felt all sorts of suffering. But how does this guarantee that you will live a life of not being okay? Well, it doesn't guarantee, but it seems likely. Why is it likely? Here's a question. What would life be like if you fundamentally thought that you would be okay? That feels like some false optimism bullshit. Why? Why is it any more bullshit than thinking the opposite, that things won't be okay? Why is the statement or thought, life will be okay, I will be okay, any more false than the statement or thought, life won't be okay, I won't be okay? Because people, myself included much of the time, seem to live as though life is scary and not okay. And because people and yourself have lived this way, does this finalize matters? What if in fact most people, yourself included, had not really investigated this matter? Say if you feel as though things will be so awful, if you feel as though things will be so awful, be awful and so on, what if you actually thought things would be great and that life would eventuate as it needed to? But how would I know? Well, how would you know that they wouldn't be okay? What makes you so sure life will be a bad experience? I don't actually know. I have this sense that life is hard to live and could go very bad, that we're not allowed to do what we really want to do. Why is this so? What if life was enjoyable to live? And we could do what we really wanted to do. I mean, what if life could in fact be a tremendous and engaging experience lived well? But what if that's a delusion? But why would it be any more of a delusion than its opposite? And that's what I was working with last night. And you can see what I'm doing, where I'm taking that, is I'm sort of inquiring, and I'm not necessarily trying to flip the belief and be like, no, life is cool, dude. Like, I'm asking the question. If I feel like life has such potential to work out badly, why is it that I have so much guarantee and certainty in this, but not for the opposite, that life could actually work out just fine? Why is that? And that's the thing. I'm assuming I don't know, because I don't know the answer to that question. I don't come in with like this preconceived notion. It's like, no, I don't know. Maybe life will be awful and nothing but suffering and pain, but it could also be, I don't know, it could be a blend of beauty and art and love and also some suffering, or it could be completely beauty and I don't know though. That's the thing. I'm asking myself, why do I believe it to be a certain way? Because if I already believe it to be a certain way, that's surely coloring my experience in some way. So, what do we have to work with? What we're really doing is we're sitting down and we're asking ourselves, what actually is this fear? What is this fear? And we're using our actual feeling to go ever deepening layers. We're expanding the boundary of where we feel into it and where we can think about it. And then we can start to investigate it, and then we can start to understand it a bit better, hopefully. And I'm not going to say anything about where I feel like this goes past a certain point. Like, I may have given away a couple things here, but I I think that really what I want for you is I really want you to feel into what this does for you directly. I don't want to bias or color or shade the experience in any way, because when you can dig into what you're actually reacting to and what actually is below some of these fears, it is a tremendous experience that, or maybe it isn't. You have to give that a go. You have to investigate that. Anyway, good luck with it. And yeah, I feel like this is one of those things where I should almost say, like, I'm not a doctor, or it's like, no. But I don't think that you necessarily need that to be able to investigate yourself. I think that that's this is your God-given right as a human being, like, to be able to investigate what's going on inside, because we are the masters of our own lives, right? We are the authority, and we are explorers within ourselves, first and foremost. Anyway, subscribe, I appreciate it. Like the video, and yeah, tell me below if you feel like you got something out of it, or if you didn't. And yeah, hope you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.